Hey, what's up, guys? We are the Airtime Misfits, and you're listening to the Airtime Misfits podcast, episode 6, I think. I
Yeah.
something like that. I'm your host, Adam, alongside Nick.
How's it going?
Good. Nick's got a fresh new haircut. I
Heck
was a
yeah,
little,
I'm ready to roll.
yeah, he was kind of growing it out a while, like COVID style.
Yeah, it was just not working for me. It was time to give up on the dream and get back to feeling like a human being
Yeah,
again.
you're so close to having like a ponytail though, so or a rat
Oh,
tail.
well, yeah, one of the two. Hopefully never a rat tail, but
Right. So in today's episode is gonna be a blast. That
Oh,
that's funny because it's a pun because we're going to be talking about Volcano, the blast coaster, which was located at King's Dominion in Virginia.
so stick around and get ready to be blown away.
Yeah, yes.
So Volcano the Blast Coaster was an Intamin suspended launch coaster. It used LIM or LIM launches rather, and I believe it was one of the first to ever use LIM, if not the first.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Premier was the first company to use the LIM like with
right,
Flight of Fear.
with Flight of Fear. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
This was the first launched Intamin coaster though.
Right. Yeah. That it was revolutionary in that sense. It was
Yes.
the first launched Intamin coaster, LIM, LSM, or otherwise. It was just the first launch coaster that they ever built. And as we all know now, that's pretty much their staple model is some sort of launch in almost all their coasters. But yeah, so just some stats. We're looking at about a height of 155 feet, drop of about 80 feet, and speed of 70 miles an hour with 4 inversions. So quite an action-packed coaster. Not to mention the theming is just ridiculous on this thing. And I never got the pleasure of riding it. I went to King's Dominion the year that actually just a couple weeks after King's Dominion had announced that it would not be reopening for
Oh, bummer.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so bummed, but I did get to see it sit there and rot before they
Right.
actually took it down. And
Right.
just, I mean, obviously you've ridden it, so you can speak more to this, but just the not just the theming with the mountain, the volcano aspect,
Right.
but the kind of like tiki island theme going on in the entrance and through the queue. I'm thinking,
Right.
it just seemed like. Obviously this was Paramount Park, so I was gonna say this is uncharacteristic for Cedar Fair because
Right.
we know that they don't like theming, but they
No.
they bought the coaster actually. So,
Right.
yeah, but yeah, go ahead and tell me what was your experience on it like. It seemed like such a unique coaster.
Oh
I'm really
yeah.
bummed I never got to ride it.
It was certainly unique. You had to give it that. Even if you didn't find the coaster like all that fun. I mean, it was
Yeah,
definitely fun, but if you're an enthusiast and you've been on, 100 coasters, it's probably most likely not like, near your top favorites just because uh, it's obviously fun, but it's in my personal opinion, it wasn't like mind-blowing or anything.
right.
But the one thing you do have to give it was how unique it was, and they repurposed the mountain structure, but they already had at the park because the mountain structure was built in 1978, I believe, and originally there was 3 rides that were inside the mountain. The first ride was a dark ride called Land of Dews, which is
Land of
I don't
Dues.
I don't know the history behind that name, but Dews, Dooz, Land of Dews, which was a dark
Interesting.
ride. And then there was also a flume that used part of the mountain called Voyage to Atlantis. And then there
Hmm.
was a rotor flat ride called Time Shaft.
Yeah, I feel like I heard about Time Shaft. I honestly did not know that there were 3 rides involved with the mountain. But Time Shaft, I feel like I remember hearing not to go off on too much of a tangent, but
Yeah.
they had to shut it down because of the nature of it being inside the mountain. Like so many people vomited that it actually like
no.
rusted away. Yeah, it like
Oh
rusted
no.
away at the ride. And so
Like
they had to shut it down.
the acid from the inside of people's bellies after it was like
Yes.
eating away at the ride.
Yeah. So
Oh, that's
super,
sick.
super gnarly, super gross. But like that is one thing, because that's why when you said time shaft, I was like, oh wait, yeah, that definitely happened, or something similar to that story kind of happened.
I
So,
wonder, yeah, with it being maybe with it being indoors and dark, and then I'm assuming they had some kind of lighting package, like it was just too much for some people,
yeah,
like
yeah,
or it's too disorienting.
right.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
Pretty gross. Yeah.
That's a
So
good fun fact though.
sorry to start it off on that note, but yeah.
Uh, and then in the 80s, mid 80s, they the theming of Land of Dews was refurbished to become Smurf theme. They rethemed the ride and it was called Smurf Mountain. So it was
Yeah,
still a
yeah,
dark ride, but Smurf themed.
yeah. That's what I was thinking. Would that have been Paramount era?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Okay, yeah, because
Yeah, I
I was trying
believe
to remember if that
so.
was the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm assuming Smurf was owned by Paramount. Like they owned the rights
Yeah.
to Smurf along with I think like Yogi Bear or whatever at the time and
Okay.
that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I mean, I was born in '85. So as a child, if I didn't get to go to King's Dominion when I was that young, but I would have loved Smurf Mountain. I know that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I was a little bit before my time, you old geezer, but
Yeah.
yeah, I still knew the Smurfs and watched the Smurfs, and so I knew all about that. But I think it's interesting because that was oh no, you know what? I think Hanna-Barbera would have been that era, because
Oh, right.
it was like Yogi Bear and all that were at these parks. So I'm wondering if Paramount bought Hanna-Barbera somewhere along the lines. I'm thinking. I think they probably did, but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, that would have been super cool to have that Smurf themed area and just to kind of see what it would have been like back in those days.
Right. And there are POVs that you can check out on YouTube of Smurf Mountain if you want to check out and see what it was like. It was pretty cool looking.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was probably really popular for quite a few years. But then eventually in the early to mid 90s, I think around 94 or so, they closed down Smurf Mountain and I believe all three of the rides closed at the same time. And the mountain structure just kind of sat dormant for a couple years until the park decided to team with Intamin and they created Volcano, the blast coaster. And they did have to modify the mountain a little bit. They had to obviously make it look more like a volcano, so they flattened it at the top, so there was an opening.
Right.
Yeah, and like Nick said at the beginning, this was the first launched Intamin coaster. When it debuted, it held two records. The first record was had the tallest inversion, which was 155 feet, and it held that record from 98 all the way until 2013 when Gatekeeper opened at Cedar Point, and Gatekeeper's inversion was 170 feet. And then the other record that it held when it opened was the fastest invert, and it beat out Alpengeist, which opened the year prior, and Alpengeist is 67 miles an hour.
Okay, yeah. So just beat it by 3 miles an hour. Yeah, I
Yep.
mean that's definitely something you saw between King's Dominion right around this time. King's Dominion and Busch Gardens and Williamsburg. They really competed with each other for a lot of years there in the 90s.
Yeah, back and
Because
forth,
they're
back
just
and
an
forth.
hour apart, so it was, they really had to kind of compete with one another. But yeah, I mean, I remember when this coaster came out and just thinking, like, what in the world is this? Because you never, I mean, inverts were a thing, but you never saw anything like
No,
this. I
not
mean,
like this. No.
just the structure on top of the theming, like, it's as if you're the lava coming out of a volcano. And
Yeah,
so it's
right.
just this crazy sporadic track with no real rhyme or reason. It just kind of shoots out of the hole of the volcano and you
Yeah.
go everywhere. And it just seems so interesting. I remember when this came out, just like, wow, it was almost intimidating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And on top of obviously the structure of the mountain itself being like impressive enough, but a part of the theming, they also added like fire on the top
Yeah.
of the mountain. So like this big poof of fire, like a fireball would fire up into the sky right before the coaster launched out of the top. It's so cool looking, especially at
Oh
night.
yeah.
And you can, and I don't think that they kept that theming part going all the way until the end. I think eventually they stopped doing the fire. I could be wrong, but I know when I went, I don't think they were doing the fire anymore. And when I rode it the first time, that was the year prior to Twisted Timber's opening. So it was that
20.
2017 or
That
so.
sounds right. Yeah.
2017 or 2016 I went. I can't remember. But anyways, at that time, I do not recall seeing the fire effect.
Yeah, and it sounds like, just based on the stories I've heard, that Volcano, especially toward the end of its life, had a lot of service issues and just wear and tear. Obviously, as we would learn later, that would be the demise of the coaster.
Hmm.
But along with that, I would be willing to bet that, since they had to dump so much money into maintaining the coaster, they would just kind of make sacrifices and
Right.
say,
With
we're not, we're,
effects.
we're, we're going to take out the pyrotechnics. We're gonna,
Right.
we're gonna not make it as this. We just want to prolong this life
Right.
as long as we can, and then we'll just knock it down. But
Right. Well,
yeah, so I think that for as innovative as this coaster is, it lived a pretty good life.
oh yeah. And really the coaster from the start, it had some technical issues, which you're gonna get with
Mhm.
any, with Intamin, this being their first launch coaster, you're gonna have some issues that you're gonna run into because you don't have experience doing this before with any other coaster. So it's obviously understandable that there are gonna be some bumps in the road. I think initially this coaster was slated to open at the beginning of the summer 1998, but because of technical difficulties, it didn't make its debut until August 1st of
Mhm.
1998,
Mhm.
and at a cost of $20 million, which is for 1998, that's quite a bit of money.
Oh yeah, that's B&M status right there.
Right,
Modern day B&M.
right. And I think initially the issue with the coaster was it wasn't getting enough speed to fully launch out of the volcano on a
Yeah.
consistent basis. So originally I think I read it only had one section of track that had the LIM launch. So for a while they were only filling the train half full to make it
Mm.
lighter to complete that launch. Otherwise, it was rolling back quite often. But to fix the ultimate solution to fix the problem was they added a second track section of the LIM launch.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the LIM boost, I think is what they called it.
Yeah,
To kind of give it, another boost or like an umph to kind of complete
right.
its
To get it
course.
out. Yep, to get it out of
Yeah,
the mountain
yeah.
there.
Right. So, I've heard a couple accounts of, especially in its earlier days, and I'm sure, knowing the nature of LAMs, just the rollback issues.
Hmm.
I've seen that happen. Obviously at Cedar Point many times with Dragster, even though it's a little bit of a different scenario. But that's something that I mean, I can't imagine the amount of times it would roll back. This was, again, it was a truly innovative coaster and more or less of a prototype, I guess, of this
Right,
launching system. So, I'm sure it was just a nightmare to keep up with in the late 90s and early 2000s.
right. And I don't think Intamin, as far as I know, I don't think they made too many more of these models. It was called a suspended catapult coaster.
Yes.
Um, they obviously they kept the launch technology for other coasters, and then I think Volcano kind of paved the way for the launch impulse coaster.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Because I'm looking here. This was the suspended catapult coaster. I think they did this one and they were like, okay, we're not going to make another one. So
right,
yeah.
yeah, but so it did pave the way for the impulse coaster. So your
Hmm.
Wicked Twisters and
V2
yeah,
and the
all those,
Flash and
yeah,
yeah.
vertical velocity. Yeah, so um, I know also another issue with using the mountain, it made it a little bit more difficult, I think, I think it was a little bit trickier to support the coaster, and it also made it a little bit trickier to service the coaster.
Yeah. I remember you might remember this too. It went fairly viral actually, in kind of the outside of the enthusiast realm of things. But the year before Volcano closed for good, there was like a POV of a maintenance guy like scaling the mountain. Do you remember this
Right.
video?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like to kind of like show repairs or maybe inspect it for something. And
Right.
but it made like it was viral video because it was just this to the GP, if you will. It
Yeah.
was kind of a weird, like scary kind of video. This guy just
Right.
harnessed up and jumping around this roller coaster. So
Right. Yeah. So that was definitely a challenge for the park. It
yeah.
was defined like efficient ways to keep up to date on all the safety measures for the ride. So in the summer of 2018, the park, when the park opened, Volcano also opened, but it only opened for about 3 weeks. And then I think a part broke on the ride. I'd have to look back. I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but something shut the ride down. The park pretty much had the decision to like, do we order this new part to keep this coaster going longer, or do we just say like it's at the end of its shelf life?
Right.
And they didn't make the official, so it didn't open at all the rest of 2018. And then they made the official announcement that Volcano was closed for good on February 8th of 2019,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were surprised about. There was some debate, before that, going back and forth, like, will they actually ever open it again? Because I think in that stretch of time before they made the announcement that it was going to be closed, people did get some footage of it, doing some testing cycles, and so there was
Mhm.
some life in it left. It seemed like maybe they were going to try to open it still, but ultimately they decided to close it for good.
Yeah. And you hate to see it, and you know, I don't know. As nostalgic enthusiasts, we very well know that it's never fun to watch a coaster go. But I think what really sucks, especially for the locals and for the people that rode this coaster a lot, because mind you, this was a 20-year-old coaster, but it was by far probably the most popular one still at King's Dominion.
Yeah.
From what I hear, the line was always like till the day it died, it was just constantly long.
Right.
Um, but it especially sucks for those people because they never got final rides.
Right.
There was no ceremonious type of thing like, hey guys, we're going to open it for 1 week in 2019 and then it's gone for good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was just kind of like, hey, it's closed, we can't reopen it, sorry. And that nothing hurts worse than that. You want that last goodbye.
Yeah, people, especially enthusiasts, they want to be able to say goodbye. I know that's something that always kind of disappoints me. And I know parks in general, I would hope that they don't always plan on doing it this way. Like, I'm assuming with Volcano, they probably knew that it was coming to an end sooner
Mhm.
rather than later. And I'm assuming it came sooner than they expected.
Yeah.
And I would hope under normal circumstances, they would at least, let people know, okay, this is the final summer, come ride it. And then, that's it. But, they just obviously for whatever reason, they couldn't get it back open. But yeah, it's definitely disappointing because I know for a long time, Volcano was like the centerpiece coaster of that park, at least until Intimidator 305 came. And then even after Intimidator was there, I still think it was probably a crowd favorite there, just
Yeah. Yeah.
for based alone on its looks. It was just a really cool and interesting looking coaster. So I can fully understand why people would be disappointed that it was closed. And I know after they announced that it was closed for good, so when people went to the park in 2019, the structure was still up, and so enthusiasts started like a makeshift memorial and were laying flowers down at like
Yeah.
the entrance of the ride. And
Yeah, I remember that.
so
I was there when that whole thing started, and
right.
along with that came all the speculation. Oh, they're gonna repurpose it. They're gonna rebuild something in there
Right.
and reuse the mountain. And
No,
as
they tore it down pretty quick.
they did, yeah. They didn't really leave a whole lot of room for speculation. It just kind of started with, oh, well, what are they gonna do? What's next? But then
Right.
they, King's Dominion came in and said, sorry guys, there's nothing to speculate here. It's gone.
Right.
So
I
yeah.
mean, the coaster, when I rode it, the theming was really cool throughout. So that area of the park, I believe it's called Safari Village or something Safari. It's
That sounds
the whole
right.
area is safari themed.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, right from the start of the queue, there's some theming. It's sort of, light theming, but it's carried throughout. And then the ride experience itself, though, I'm a big fan of launch coasters, and certainly the best part of Volcano to me was the launch into that, when you launch out of the volcano
Hmm.
and you hit that 155-foot tall inversion.
Yeah.
That's definitely the highlight. And then after that, it just kind of meanders down the mountain, and there's like, I think 3 inline twists. Those are your other inversions. So like the rest of the ride, it's fun, but it's, the most extreme thrilling part of the ride is that initial launch out of the mountain. And then the rest is just kind of, you're kind of coming down the mountain with a few inversions. So, really fun ride. I liked it better than like the Intamin Impulse rides just because it's more unique and there's more of a variety in the ride experience. But yeah, my overall experience with it was positive. I liked
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and that's I never really heard again I wish I would have been able to ride it, but I've never heard really any negative. I mean, I'm sure someone has a negative opinion out there. Like I know in 2006 there was an incident in which someone was injured by flying debris, and I'm sure they don't really think fondly of the coaster.
Right.
I'm thinking the people that might have gotten stuck on it, of the hundreds of times I'm sure it's valleyed and they've had to evacuate or whatever the case, I'm sure they don't
Right.
have a great opinion of it. But in general, it's an enthusiast favorite, it's a GP favorite. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was just a crowd pleaser in every
Yeah.
sense.
It's
um
yeah, it's certainly a unique coaster. I mean, I can't think of any other coaster like it. Nothing comes to
no,
mind anyways.
no, not at all. And like you said, it really paved the way for the impulse model, which we kind of saw die out in the mid 2000s.
Right.
But
It was a
there's
really
still a good
popular
number.
model. Yeah. That was a really popular model in the like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, in a lot of parks, especially in the Cedar Fair chain, have one. And
Yep.
it so yeah, it was revolutionary in its own right, and it really kind of paved the way for launch coasters, I think, in general. And now you see all sorts of manufacturers have all sorts of different launches, and
Right.
it's got to give credit where it's due. It's a great coaster.
Absolutely. So I was, usually on our podcast episodes, we try to find the original promo commercial for Volcano.
Hmm.
I'm assuming there was one at some point because I'm assuming they wanted to advertise a new ride. I couldn't
Right.
find it, and Nick couldn't find it.
Nope.
So for fun, anyways, I found a King's Dominion commercial from the mid '80s, I believe. So around the time Smurf Mountain may have been open, it could have been Land of Dew still, but the mountain certainly was there. And this commercial has a catchy jingle, and we're fans of the catchy jingles, so I figured
Oh
we'd
yeah.
at least take a look at this and kind of get a sense of what the park was like in the mid '80s. This song, though, I thought was really catchy, so it's probably going to be stuck in your head the rest of the day. So you are welcome.
Oh yes.
All right, so the commercial is called King's Dominion, the Golden Years commercial. You can find it on YouTube.
You could go to the
See, there's the
world,
mountain.
say hi to
Sorry,
Yep.
I'm going to pause it for a second, back it up. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, I include the, obviously, as you can see, I include the commercial so you can see what we're looking at, but the mountain's in the background. It's cool to see. It looks like it used to have a waterfall on the front.
Yeah.
And then you can see like at the top of the mountain there where they had to flatten it out so that it had left room for the coaster to shoot out. It is weird to see the mountain without the coaster structure around it.
Very. And or really anything like
Right.
around it. There's not, because there are a couple coasters out that way, but it's pretty much just the mountain in this
Right.
commercial.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to start it over. There we go. Here we go.
You could go to the lost world, say hi to Yogi Bear, or ride the mighty rebel yell. That is it.
I love all the old coaster
You
footage.
could go to a Broadway
yeah.
show and really have a ball, but I'll bet that you can't do it all.
Wow.
That lady almost fainted.
Ho, ho, but you can't do it all. So much make-believe and magic, but you can't do it all.
Oh,
Ho, 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 but you can't do it all.
Oh, that pizza looked awesome.
You can go on a safari, ride rides big and small, from the time shaft to the
Oh, okay. I'm going to pause it again. So we saw another ride. So the Time Shaft, which is the ride that Nick mentioned earlier that people barfed on. It looks like, well, the entrance was in the outside of the mountain.
Yeah, the exit. Yeah.
Sorry, I gotta find it. It looks like, no, that wasn't it. That's a kid's flat ride. This kid's flat ride looks cool. It's like the brim of a hat that you're twirling around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so time shaft, there's the entrance and exit. So yeah, I think it was inside the mountain. So in the dark, that's where people barfed and ruined the ride. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Ruined everything for us.
But it's another good shot of the mountain. It was really cool looking. And I wonder, I know, I think before Intamin built Volcano, they had considered working with other coaster manufacturers. And even with Intamin, I think that initially they proposed a different model altogether, which you can find on YouTube. Someone recreated the original design proposal, which it's pretty cool. But I wonder, what else could have been done with the mountain had Intamin not made Volcano.
Yeah, because they were able to cram three rides
right
in and around it. I mean, yeah, it would have been interesting.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue.
Bet you can't do it all. Ho, 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 ho. Bet you
Can't do it all.
You're not far away from a family day at King's Dominion. Bet you can't do it all at King's Dominion. We can't be outdone for screams and dreams and a mountain of fun.
Wow, those graphics.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. Hey, ho, ho. Bet you can't do it all. It's catchy.
It's very Yogi Bearish.
It is, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's cool to see footage from the park back then and see what the mountain was, originally. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see like that blast from the past. And it looks like the park used to have like a monorail.
Yeah, it did. It looked, it was an old school looking monorail too.
Yeah. Yep. So as we had said earlier, they completely demolished the mountain, completely leveled it. So now there's just kind of a big open space there. And then across from Volcano was a flat ride called the Crypt, I believe.
Yes.
Which was, I forget what that flat ride model is called.
It was a top spin.
Yes,
of some sort.
Spin. Yes, it was. And I did ride that too when I visited the park. But that is also removed. And if you've been following the news of King's Dominion at all, you know that they have a 4D SNS model coaster sitting in their parking lot waiting to be built. And I think the rumor is that that's going to be taking up the space of the Crypt ride, which still leaves all the room where Volcano used to be.
Yeah, and first of all, I think a lot of people saw that there was a 4D coming, and the general consensus was, "What the heck, guys?
Right,
this is the best you can do."
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of the 4D SNS coasters. They're fine, and I would take this over that flat ride that they've removed. But
sure.
I don't know, kind of in a way, I think Six Flags kind of ruined the 4D SNS.
Yeah, they just beat it to death.
Yeah, just because it's been cloned over and over and over again. And I don't know officially if this is going to be a clone of all the other 4D SNS coasters. I would assume it is going to be very similar. Yeah, so it's a weird decision. This is going to be the first 4D SNS at a Cedar Fair park.
Yeah, so I'll be interested because, knowing Cedar Fair, my guess is that they're not going to make it identical to the Six Flags clones just because they like to do their own thing, which I respect.
Yeah, I think that would be wise. Right,
yeah. And, the other thing that I think will be interesting is, pretty much once they knocked down the mountain, if I remember correctly, there were blueprints discovered of a potential wing coaster taking over the plot where Volcano is. So that might still take place. That might still be something that we can look forward to in the future. Yeah. And I think that would be a great addition to that park. The park needs something like that now that, the suspended coasters are gone. It's some sort of wing coaster or even another suspended coaster, something to switch things up. So
yeah, I agree. So yeah, I also saw the coaster plans you're talking about. It was for a wing coaster, and it was going to be in the spot where Volcano was. and it seemed like they were moving ahead with it. And I don't know, what happened to make them change their mind, because I think they changed their mind even before COVID happened or anything like that.
Yeah.
They, for whatever reason, they kind of pulled out of that deal with B&M. And another thing that I don't know if you remember, this was a couple of years ago, but there was photos of a new coaster model going around. It was like a monster truck wing coaster.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and there was speculation that King's Dominion might do something with that monster truck theme. So that could have been cool. And even around the time when those the wing coaster blueprints leaked, King's Dominion, they did have kind of a teaser going around, I think in the park near Volcano, but there was like posters put around. It was like a safari themed with elephants. I can't remember what the wording was, but it led you to believe that something was happening, that something was in the works.
Yeah,
but it seemed like
Easter eggs. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like whatever their original plan was, I'm assuming the wing coaster, for whatever reason, they backed out of it, and they decided to go the 4D SNS model route.
Mm-hmm. Which is a bummer, but if you're going to fill a flat ride spot, it makes sense. It's a small layout,
Right. And it adds to your coaster count. So
yeah, exactly. And that's what Cedar Fair is all about. So
the theming of the ride does look cool, though. They painted the supports to look like bamboo, and then the track itself is green. So it fits in that safari theme really well.
Yeah.
And something is going to go into the place of Volcano eventually. We know that. I'm sure COVID, has delayed any plans for that. But sometime in the next 4 years, I would say something's going to be in that spot. Wing coaster. So. Yeah, wing coaster would be great. Another invert could be really good.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be interesting to see, would they kind of, maybe try to keep that Volcano's theming as an homage going, or, whatever they do. It'll be really interesting to see. I don't think they're going to build a volcano in that spot again or anything like that. But,
no.
But maybe they'll do a launched wing coaster or a launched invert or something.
Or, something like it'd be fun if they did one of those Vekoma suspended coasters and called it Son of Volcano.
Yeah, perfect.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's something else that park could use, is a mid-sized family type coaster. So, there are all sorts of different options.
Yeah, it is a good park. And I think, they have Intimidator 305. They have Twisted Timbers. They're kind of missing that third coaster, that third top tier coaster. Because I don't know what would be the third best coaster there.
Probably Dominator. I mean,
Dominator. Yeah, you're right.
And Dominator's great, but I think in any scenario in which a floorless coaster is one of your top three, you got to get something better. Because it is great, but you just need that third piece to kind of take its place.
Yeah, having your third best coaster being a floorless is so early 2000s.
So early 2000s. What are we, Geauga Lake? Come on.
Right. Yeah, you need that GCI wooden coaster, and they have the RMC. You need something like a launch coaster.
Yeah.
Bring in Mach or something.
Yeah, heck yeah. I mean, at Carowinds, just a few hours down the road, you got Copperhead Strike, which people are like, oh, it's fine, but it's a great addition to that park.
Right.
I mean, I think Mach is doing great things.
Right. I could even see King's Dominion adding a B&M hyper coaster.
Absolutely. I think that would work out really well.
Yeah, I do too, actually, because a lot of their parks have like Canada's Wonderland and Carowinds, they both have the B&M Giga and the B&M Hyper, and it works out still. But I think in King's Dominion case, it'd work out even more, because Intimidator 305, which is built by Eneman, is such a different experience than the typical B&M Hyper coaster.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of speed, a lot of quick turns, just like a really extreme ride. And whereas a B&M Hyper coaster would be more of that airtime filled,
Yeah, and I think going forward with whatever new coaster King's Dominion plans, and really kind of their whole dilemma is like, okay, we would love to do a B&M Hyper, but Busch Gardens has one down the road.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're probably like, man, we want to do something new and exciting. So yeah, with that in mind, I would love it if they got a Hyper. But I wouldn't be surprised if they turn their nose up to a hyper or an invert or any like a dive coaster, anything that you could find in Williamsburg. I'm
Yeah, that's a
sure
good
they'll stay
point.
away from.
Because those parks are so close together.
Yeah, it's literally an hour or two, maybe.
Yeah,
like not far at all.
Yeah, and even maybe if they did go the hyper route, maybe bring someone else in to do it, like Inamin or Mach or Premiere or SNS or some just to switch it up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I would love to see like something crazy where there's only like one other in the country, like a Mach Extreme Spinner or something like that.
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
A time traveler type thing would fit really well in that place, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's all kinds of different speculations. We'd love to hear you guys and what you think will go there. Maybe you have an insider scoop that you'd be willing to share with us.
Right.
In terms of future plans, and
it seems like any plans they've had have probably been put on hold for COVID. It seems like most parks are most parks plans seem like they're gonna be delayed for a year. Even with their 40 SNS, that was already in the works before COVID happened. King's Dominion did not open at all this past summer, or were they open for certain events?
I don't believe they opened at all. I believe Carowinds opened for an abbreviated schedule.
Yeah, they did.
I don't think King's Dominion opened.
No, if it opened, it might have been for a Christmas event or something like that. Because I know
that's right. Yeah, you know what? It might have done that. Yeah.
Which was, I don't even know if any rides were open. It might have just been, a few things open,
like one or two. Yeah.
Right. So it's even up in the air, kind of, whether or not their 40 S&S is going to be open in 2021. Because as far as I would assume it is, but as far as I know, it's still sitting in the parking lot, not put together.
Yeah, it's February. You'd think they'd probably get a move on by that, especially if they wanted to open by opening weekend, which is typically in or around early to late March. So I don't see it happening that early.
Doesn't seem so. Yeah,
doesn't seem like they could get that going super quick, but we'll see. I would anticipate if it does open, it will be once the vaccines have kind of made their rounds, and I'd say July, August maybe it might open if they get going on it. So we'll see.
Yep. And because I know the park plans on being open, I think they've announced, most Cedar Fair parks announced their opening days. So
yes,
don't expect to ride their new 4D S&S coaster though.
Yeah, sorry guys, it's just probably not going to happen. Not unless you're going later.
Right. Yep. So I think that about wraps up from Volcano. Make sure, if you guys don't know, we are available on iTunes and Spotify now. So if you prefer to listen to us on one of those apps, you can find us there now. Of course, we have YouTube. And so you can go back and listen to all of our old episodes. And that's it. Any final words, Nick, about Volcano? It sucks that you didn't get to ride it. Yeah, R.I.P.
I know. R.I.P. Volcano, man. I'm bummed I couldn't ride it, but its memory will live on in our hearts.
That's right. Yes. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Be sure to leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts about Volcano or what could replace it in the future. Thanks for listening. Check out airtimemisfits.com. We got some cool stuff for sale in there, and we have some stuff in the works to bring more products soon, so we're excited about that. So keep an eye out. Check out airtimemisfits.com. Thanks for listening, guys.
See ya.